Thanks, Carl. Very nice to be here. Thank you all very much for coming to the morning slot, my Sunday morning sermon. It's nice to see a few people in the congregation. My name, as Carl said, is Tim Phillips. I am the Managing Director of CBD Intel, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about some of the market data that we collect and some of the consumer data that I think will be of interest. So I'll talk about a number of things today. One, I'm going to talk about a bit of a focus on the UK. We carried out a survey about a month and a half ago of manufacturers in the UK. So I'm going to set the scene about the UK market. Where are we? What's the UK CBD market doing at the moment? And then I'll talk a bit about some of the survey results, and I think some of those are fairly interesting. And then we'll go on to talk more about consumer segmentation, what's going on with consumers, not just in the UK, but we work all across the world, actually. So I've focused a bit on Europe and Japan, just to show you some differences between some of those markets. So we'll look at that, and then we'll look at a little bit about attitudes towards the category. A bit about us to start with. So we have been around for just over 6 years now. We're a team of 35 analysts. We're a UK company, but actually our headquarters are based in Spain, in Barcelona. We have a large team of permanent analysts out there, and then we have people all around the world. As Carl mentioned, we started off life, and we still operate a company, a sister company called eCig Intelligence. And that does the same methodologies, if you like, to gather data on the vaping sector. More about which we can talk about later. The vaping sector is having a few problems, as you've probably heard, in the US at the moment. We realized, over the last kind of couple of years that a lot of our clients were starting to manufacture CBD, they were starting to sell CBD. CBD was becoming one of those things that the vape industry was looking at really quite seriously. And as many of you know, if you're looking at around the hall today, a lot of the companies that are in the vape space are also now in the CBD space. But the CBD space, as we'll talk about, is much wider. It's a much wider category of consumers. It's a very fragmented category, just like vape is. And there are a lot of parallels. So I think a lot of the learnings that we've been through in the vape sector are very applicable for the development of the CBD sector right now. Good. I think that's it. As I said, we have a team all around the world, but we're focused outside of the US. We're starting to do some work on US CBD markets, but I think our speciality and the thing that distinguishes us from some of our competitors is really the fact that we're looking at European and international, particularly Asian markets. Okay, let's start off this discussion with talking about the UK market. Since we're here, and since a lot of you, I guess, are going to be very interested in the UK market. So what is happening in the UK CBD market? You know, there's a lot of sector interest. You can see how shows like this are extremely well attended, and there are lots and lots of brands. But what's actually happening? Well, we've done a big sort of wide net look at the UK industry. We've picked up 700 brands, which I think you'll agree is quite a lot of brands. It's quite a lot of brands for a market that's only been around for the last few years. This is just an idea. Some of these big names that you can see are the ones that we're seeing as being most prominent in the UK market. But I think the story here is that the market is very, very fragmented, lots and lots of brands. What about the retail distribution channels? Well, online is a major distribution channel in the UK. It's at least a third of the market, if not more, in the UK. And we're seeing 600 online retailers. So again, a huge distribution of retailers across the UK. Now, the biggest section of that, with over 200, is the single brand retailers. So brand retailers that are dedicated to their own brand. But what's rather interesting is that of the 700 brands that we have out there in the UK, we're only picking up just over 200 websites where you can actually transact and buy. So potentially an opportunity. And then, as you can see, we've got quite a lot of CBD specialist retailers online, so a lot of companies that are opening up stores online and are specialized in retailing. Then the rest of those are offline. The rest of the distribution channels are offline. We're seeing vape as a major distribution channel, so a lot of vape stores are now stocking CBD. This is the same in a lot of the big markets. So in the US, more than 3/4 of vape stores are currently stocking CBD, and they're not just stocking CBD vape, I should point out. They're stocking all types of products, particularly oils. Yeah, a huge variety of different distribution channels that you guys, if you're manufacturers, will be looking at and will be needing to take into account. Okay, from this this section here where we're looking at all the online retailers, we've looked at all the multi-brand retailers online, and what we were looking at is what kind of products are they selling. Now, this is not an indication of sales. No one's got sales data, but it's as a good proxy, I think, to look at the distribution and therefore the demand, and as a proxy for sales, I think this is a pretty good thing to be looking at. Quite clearly, CBD oils are the biggest category in the UK, and I don't think that would be any surprise to any of you. But what is quite interesting is that behind that, we've got liquids, we've got topicals, capsules, and edibles coming up really quite fast. So again, this just adds to this picture that I've been trying to talk about. You know, this is a very fragmented market, fragmented brands, fragmented distribution channels, fragmented products that the CBD is going into. And I hope that comes through quite clearly. As we said, CBD specialist sites are the biggest category here in terms of retailers, and you wouldn't be surprised to see that those guys sell the most number of brands. Quite interesting. So of around, here we are, 200 odd CBD specialists, we've got something like 550 brands being selected. So as we'll come on to, you know, stores are tending to sell multiple numbers of brands. So a multi-brand retailer, it doesn't have hundreds of brands, but it certainly has, you know, between 2 and 5. And in fact, this is shown in the next slide. How many brands do you stock? And the biggest number, the median, is 1 to 5 brands, but there are some retailers that stock many more than that. By the way, if any of you guys want the slides for this presentation, do come and either give me your cards afterwards and I'll send it to you, or we have a stand over in the far side, in the far corner over there. I'm very happy to take cards over there as well. Okay, so this is the start of some excerpts from our UK manufacturer and brand survey, which we carried out, as I said, a month or so ago. We did it in conjunction with Hemp CBD Expo, actually, so they helped us to get respondents to the survey. We had around 60 responses, but really only about 30 were full completes. So it's not a huge source of data, but actually in terms of manufacturers and brands, it does give some good indications, I think, of what's going on. So this first slide here is just really pointing out what kind of companies have responded to our survey. And as you can see, most of these companies are young companies. Over half of them are less than 2 years old. No surprise, we know this sector is very young, but I think that just nicely summarizes that in the pie chart on the right. Numbers of employees, I think also rather interesting that these businesses are mostly small, and over half of them have between 1 and 5 employees. But nevertheless, that you can see some of the other companies there have many more employees. This is a sector that is growing fast and employing people in this country, and that's, I think, a very important point to make if you're ever talking to regulators, government ministers, and so on. What kind of businesses are these? Well, now, there's a funny section in here which is about 30% say none of the above, but all of these are either brands or manufacturers of some sort. But as you can see, we've got brands and we've got distributors as well. So lots of multiple functions within the same company. We're seeing this in CBD as we saw it in vape, that many companies are both manufacturing and they're creating a brand and they're distributing and potentially they're retailing as well. So you've got a number of different points in the value chain in the same company, and I think that's pretty common. Okay, perception of the state of the CBD industry. What do companies in this sector think about the sector that they're in? Well, I think the first point at the top to make is that it's incredibly positive. There is a lot of positivity going on in this sector. 2/3 of companies are either positive or very positive about the future of it and the attitude towards the sector. So that's a very good sign. It should be that case, okay? If you've got a new sector that's bubbling up, of course it makes sense that everyone's positive about it. The chart below, again, not quite clear what's going on here, other than I think the fact that the channels that are being used and the channels that are being seen in the industry as the fastest growing are very different. So different companies have very different views about what kind of distribution channel is best for them or what is likely to grow in the future. Again, I think this just adds into that picture of fragmentation and the fact that companies are using all sorts of different channels. Okay, a last slide on the survey. So top thing, what do you see as the main threat to the CBD business? I think what comes out very clearly, nearly half of respondents thought that regularity and regulation and lack of regulatory certainty is an issue. I don't think that's any surprise. We've been going through all sorts of question marks over novel food legislation around CBD edibles, and clearly there are problems with the legality of other products in the CBD space. So I think what the industry is crying out for is some kind of regulatory certainty. But you can see that there are some other concerns here. I'm glad to see that lack of information is one of the key areas that is noted as a threat, and hopefully we can help to fill some of those gaps. And then the next biggest trend, interesting really, what do people see as the next biggest trend? Well, food is a big one. A third of respondents thought that food was the next big thing. Full spectrum, we know full spectrum is already out there. Lots of legal question marks over full spectrum products, but certainly a lot of respondents are thinking that that's the future. And then you can see the other things, sports being an interesting one in that. Good. We've obviously got a lot more data out of this survey. We'd like to do more surveys because, frankly, this is not enough response to really get a good indication of what's going on in the industry. And I think on the basis that we publish this kind of data and you guys can go and use it to either talk to regulators, talk to the industry and so on, hopefully we'll try and get this going and get more people involved in the survey, because the survey is only as good as the respondents you get, of course. Okay, I'm going to talk about some other surveys we've done now, much more focused on consumer surveys. We've been doing surveys of CBD users across Europe and as you can see there, US and Japan. So here we've taken out some of the interesting parts of some of the work we've been doing. This slide is just talking about demographics. So what is the age range of consumers that are using CBD? And I think what's very apparent right from the start is this is a very broad brush product set, right? The consumers who are using this product can be any age. Interestingly, we're seeing some differential. So the green on the left, the green sort of colours are the younger age group, and then the purples and blues on the right are older age groups. We're definitely seeing a younger demographic going on in France, and we're seeing a bit of a younger demographic going on in the US and Japan. In France, we think that is caused a lot by the fact that vaping of CBD is a major product category. So vapes are very popular in France, and we think that kind of tends to be preferred by younger generations. So that might be a reason. But the main sort of story I wanted to take out of this graph was just that the age ranges are very varied, and that's very good news, right? You've got people right from the ages of 18 and possibly below, right up to the 55 plus age range. So very good for the sector. You've got a very broad addressable audience. Sex as well. So gender is pretty balanced. Again, in France, we see a little bit of a difference, and maybe Japan as well. We're seeing a preponderance of men in France. We think, again, down to the fact that vaping is a big product category there. But pretty much, this is very much balanced. And at this point, it's kind of worth pointing out that in the vape space, which obviously we've come from and understand very well, if you put up a graph like this for the vape sector, for nicotine vaping, it would be very much more male-dominated. So this is a much more, gender equal kind of product. Okay, attitudinal stuff. So what do consumers think? Why are they using these products? Now, most of us kind of know anecdotally why our consumers are using, but I think this is interesting just to get some data. And as you can see, we've asked more than 1,000 users across these 3 European countries, France, Germany, and the UK. I think the main reasons are fairly clear to see. So it's a pain relief, it's a stress relief, and it's a relaxation and anxiety relief reason. So those are the reasons why people are using it. That's what they're reporting as saying as the reasons to use. And it's a bit stronger in some countries. So pain relief in the UK is clearly showing a bit of a bias upwards compared to Germany and France. Again, reasons by age and reasons by gender. So we're seeing a fairly equal baseline. If you look at the baseline split, which is the blue dotted line, then you can see how it compares. So basically, we're clearly by age seeing pain relief being over. It's over profiling it for the older generation, no surprise there. And I guess stress relief and to a certain extent anxiety relief is over indexing for younger generation. Again, probably no surprise, but it's nice to see these numbers confirmed by the data. And then again, a little bit by gender. Gender balance seems pretty simple, but there's a bit of over indexing for relaxation among males. Kind of interesting to look at. Okay, what product types are people consuming? So in the slides before, we were looking at actually how does the market break down, how do the product form factors break down, so what are consumers saying they're using? And again, this really confirms what we were showing before, that oil is the predominant category, that we're seeing some e-liquids and vaping as being pretty important, and then kind of capsules and other edible products. So I don't think this is any surprise, but again, it's nice to see it, and it's nice to see the countries compared one another. And as you can see, the green bar in the middle there for France is showing quite a high over-indexing for vape. Purchase channels for these different types of products. Well, again, we're saying online as being very important. A third of the market at least is going through the online channel. That's more in some markets outside of these 3 main European markets. We're seeing online as being a very important channel. But worth bearing in mind that it's only around a third, and the rest of the market is going through the offline channel. So it's pretty important to get clear what the offline channel is doing and where products are going through. Health food stores are really important in some markets. But again, so UK over-indexing for health foods. UK and France, vape stores are very important. And then we're seeing head shops really important in Germany. Head shops and pharmacies, interestingly, rather important for the German market. Now, this is changing as well over time. So the important thing to say about this is that every time we do these kinds of surveys, we're seeing big changes take place. And this is a fast-moving sector. So there will be no surprise if the distribution channels change, if the mix of different products change over time as well. Carl, how much longer have I got? Because I'm probably running out of time. 3 more minutes? 5 more minutes? All right, I'll keep going. Right, here's the outcome of the average monthly spend. Again, very healthy numbers coming out of that. That's the first thing to say. These are nice kind of rounded bell curves, which you would expect about monthly spend. And we're seeing the sort of median being around the sort of 10 to 20 euro mark, something like that. We're seeing perhaps a little bit of a, you can see where the kind of bell curve is. So in the UK, it's fairly pronounced. That signifies that the market is probably more competitive than it is in Germany and France, simply because the prices are consolidating into one sector. So the fact that the UK has that big bar in the 10 to 20 euro range means, of course, that a lot of people are competing for that same price range, and that tends to be what consumers are spending. There's a bit of a broader spectrum for the other countries, and so France, again, the bell curve seems to be kind of maximum in that 10 to 20 range. Germany seems to be a little bit higher. The range seems to go up to around the 40 euro mark. So potentially, users are spending a bit more in Germany. But again, prices are changing all the time. We're monitoring this all the time, and we're seeing prices continually change. And that's because the raw ingredient prices are changing. I mean, if you look at CBD wholesale prices, they are coming down and very fast. So we're going to see this change a lot over the next few months, I would say. Okay, I'm going to move on through this pretty fast. So interestingly, the amount spent per user is roughly the same. It's fairly independent of the kind of product that you're buying. Ignore that very weird bar for the UK on flower. That's just an illicit market number, so it kind of doesn't make any sense. You can ignore that. But I think what's interesting here is it doesn't really matter what product you're buying. You're as a consumer, you're on average spending the same amount of money. I've got 2 more slides, very quickly, Carl. I know you're hovering to get me off. Couple of things that I think are kind of issues for the industry. The first thing is dosage, and I think we know this, but consumers are really confused by products. And I think the industry really, if it's going to grab this consumer and work with a consumer, they've really got to explain better. We've got to explain better to a consumer what CBD is and what the dosage should be and what's required. And so you can see here, when we ask the question, do you find it difficult to identify the right CBD dosage? Half of our respondents say yes. That's a big problem. Your consumers don't understand the product. And then even worse, of course, is product satisfaction. You're much more likely to be unsatisfied with your product if you find it difficult to dose, and it makes sense. But again, I think this just kind of really points to that. So education is really important, and trying to get consumers to understand what they should be doing with this product is crucial. Okay, last slide. Again, what are the factors that consumers are using to choose a CBD brand? It's very difficult. How are you going to differentiate your brand from another one? So we asked some questions about what it is that drives consumer purchase, and as you can see, there are some clearly pretty important factors, and no surprise, price is kind of on top there as being very important. More than half of respondents say that that's a very important or essential item. Interestingly, organic is very, very strong there, and trustworthy retailer. And again, I think this trustworthy element is the one that beats everything. I think a message from this slide is that not only do we as an industry have to educate our consumers better, but we have to also get them to trust us. And I think so those 2 slides at the end there are things that I would like to leave the industry with. I think, as I said, we keep surveying this. We're going to see these things change, and I'd like to see over time that these things come down. So trustworthy retailer becomes less of an issue in the UK, and potentially some of these other things like lab reports, which are crucial, frankly, to get trust, but those kinds of things become more important. Good, that's it from me. I hope that was interesting. As I said, if you would like the slides, I'm very happy to send them to you. Just come and give me a card afterwards, or come and visit our stand, and we can tell you more about what we do. Thanks very much, Carl.
Thank you. Tim, please stay on the stage. Does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any questions for Tim? Because I have a ton.
No.
Just a quick show of hands. Distributors? Anyone? Brand owners? Retailers? Anything else? Manufacturers? Do you guys look at data in terms of, as an input to your businesses, in terms of product specificity, gender-specific things? Do you use data in the marketplace in terms of identifying an opportunity or a channel? Yeah? Yes, some people do. Okay. From your view, Tim, get back on. I want to ask some questions. Get me stand on the stage. No, I've got questions. From a consumer perspective that you have, opportunity-wise, there's some slides there around education, around dosage, and we've got some specific geographical pieces there. Do you think, in terms of a growth subsector of CBD, is there anything that come out of the data that you had that was a big red sort of, that's where to play? So we're looking at where to play and how to play piece. Was there anything that came out of the surveys that you thought there's an opportunity here for a retailer, from a manufacturer, from a distributor, from a brand owner that they could go and play?
Okay, I think to answer this question, I might just kind of refer back to vaping, and I mentioned vaping earlier on, and as you know, that we work a lot in the vaping sector as well. What's happening in the vaping sector in the US at the moment is a catastrophe, okay? You've had Trump sitting down in the Oval Office with a press briefing saying, I want to ban flavors. And of course, that is the result of huge amount of media attention around some of the deaths that have been happening. There's been if you haven't heard about it, there's been some deaths attributed at the moment to vaping, and it's probably vaping cannabis oils. But what's been hit hardest is the vaping sector, so the nicotine vaping sector, interestingly. Now, I only bring that up because I think what is an opportunity maybe for this industry is to look at some other parallel industries and learn from it. And what happened in vaping is something that could easily happen in CBD without any problem, okay? And before you know it, you've got a massive crisis going on. Because even if, by the way, in the US, this kind of potential ban on flavors is averted, probably will be, okay, it'll be challenged in court, there'll be all sorts of fights going on, but the big problem will be consumers are looking at this category going, don't like the look of that, not really interested in doing that anymore. And the reason for it, I think, funnily enough, is the fact that there hasn't been enough legislation, there hasn't been good regulation, and there haven't been any standards, both in the US for vaping, although, of course, you know, a lot of vaping companies are very well run and the products they produce are very safe. But, you know, what's been happening, particularly in the cannabis space, where you're filling up little cartomizers with oils, there's been very little control of what's going on into that product. And you know, of course, what's happened is a crisis for the sector. So look, an opportunity for the sector. It's very difficult in a very fragmented sector to do this, but there needs to be some kind of control, some kind of set of standards, an agreed industry set of standards that everyone abides with, and really high sets of standards in terms of production, so that you know you avoid these kinds of problems. That point at the end, that kind of slide I had at the end about trustworthiness is critical, and you have it as long as something doesn't go wrong, and when it goes wrong, it's a disaster for the sector. So I guess that would be my one point. Okay. Yeah.
Final opportunity. If you don't want to speak or ask any questions for Tim now, his stand is just at the end of this corridor. Please do go speak to him. A wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience. So once again, thank you, Tim Phillips.
Thank you.